Emerging markets, including South Africa, have felt the effects of U.S. protectionism. Countries like Turkey have been hard hit, with Washington imposing import tariffs on their products. The lira tanked when U.S. President Donald Trump took aim at Ankara, and it's been good and bad for businesses here. Take a look. It's one of the oldest and largest covered markets in the globe. Millions of dollars and lira are exchanged in the Grand Bazaar.
Hi guys, the name of the gallery is a carpet art. So this gallery is here about 33 years.
From famous Turkish carpets to this world favorite.
Good.
This is where thousands of small businesses operate. Entrepreneurs who understand the intricacies of jittery markets. Let's go back to this guy. He sells Turkish carpets for a living and says a stronger dollar works in his favor.
So nowadays we have lots of guests from different countries, and we are selling a lot. So like better than 2015.
Most, if not all, of these businesses thrive on foreign visitors. They pay in dollars, and it's a pretty sweet deal for most of them.
For business is okay. For business is okay, but for countries a little bit not okay, because for the people, tourists who always come to Istanbul, and you know, it's for $100 they can stay one day. Now they can stay 4 days. It's good for the tourism. It's good because going up and they can spend more time, more quality, for example. But for the country, it's not good.
Selling finished products means they escape the import tariffs imposed on Turkish goods.
I'm not really affected by it because I do one-of-a-kind handmade stuff. So my customers in the States, they buy each particular item.
But they all admit it is having a negative impact on their daily lives, more especially on those who don't have the advantage of earning in dollars. U.S. President Donald Trump isn't a favorite here. In fact, many blame him for the increased interest rates and high inflation, the result of import tariffs which caused the lira to tank.
Gone on a path that uses trade as a weapon, uses the dollar as a weapon, because people think that parochialism is okay. Selfishness is the normal state of affairs. And, well, if we think back to world history before 1946, 1947, the world was a jungle. And so that seems to be where President Trump wants to lead us again.
Tough words for a man who once worked for the U.S. government, but it comes as many suffer, especially the big guys. This is the business district of Istanbul. It's fancy and has the financial clout that'll make your head spin with dollar signs. Trade wars are pretty ugly between Turkey and the U.S. Some companies in these skyscrapers will feel the money pinch. Back at the bazaar, a call to prayer echoes through the 60 streets and alleys. It calms the underlying nerves many of these people have but won't want to speak about. With their faith intact, they go about their busy daily lives, hoping and praying for success. Shahan Ramkissoon, Istanbul. Well, it's not only the Turkish lira that's taking a pounding. Argentina's peso has come under pressure following the abrupt resignation of the central bank governor. His exit comes amid fears that the economic crisis in South America's third biggest economy could worsen. This as the president says he expects the recession to continue for the next 5 months. Aldrin Sampear reports from Buenos Aires.
The Argentine peso took a knock immediately after the announcement of the central bank governor's resignation on Tuesday.
This is a signal of the control of the IMF in the Argentine economy. The resignation of Caputo gives a free way for the political orientation of the IMF.
Capito, a former finance minister, is the second central bank president to resign this year. And Argentinians watching these developments from the sidelines don't seem to buy the version that the sudden resignation was for personal reasons. But being told what to do is exactly what Argentina's leaders have to come to terms with right now, at least if they want the multi-billion-dollar bailout loans from the International Monetary Fund. The government is now pinning its hopes on a new deal for more money from the IMF, hoping it will restore some confidence in an economy that has endured yet another knock. On the streets, it means the pesos in these people's pockets is losing buying power. It's already lost half its value to the dollar this year. Aldrin Sampear, Buenos Aires, Argentina.
In Brazil, a far right-wing nationalist presidential candidate is currently sitting in pole position. Michael Appel is covering the story for us from Rio de Janeiro. Michael, it's not long to go before Brazilians start casting their ballots. How is this election shaping up?
Yes, next month Brazil heads to the polls for the first round of the presidential election. If you're between the ages of 18 and 70 in this country, it's compulsory for you to vote. Now, a recent poll found that up to 40% of voters in Brazil are either planning to abstain or, even at this late stage, have no idea who they're going to vote for. Let's be honest, voters vote with their hearts, not necessarily their heads. Or do they?
Yeah, it's a lack of rationality. That's the problem in Brazil right now.
Sociologist Maurizio Fabiao says this election is incredibly complex and with so many unknowns at the same time. Fascinatingly, the former president of Brazil, Lula da Silva, who left office with an approval rating of over 80%, is said to be playing puppet master, all while serving 12 years in jail for corruption. Is this the most contested election in Brazil's history, do you think?
It's more complex election because we don't know what happened. We don't know what's going on. The candidates of work party are growing because the influence of Lula.
Yeah.
But
who's sitting in jail?
Who's in jail? In jail, he's having influence in this election. But we don't know what's going to happen.
Isn't that fascinating that somebody who is sitting behind bars in jail is able to influence an election?
It's amazing. We don't never happen that in Brazil.
I asked political science professor João Ferreira from the Rio de Janeiro State University how Brazil even got to a place where right-wing nationalists have grown in popularity.
I think it's a long process through which politics was criminalized through corruption scandals, very much exploited by the media for political purpose. So the big media in Brazil, exploited corruption scandals that had some truth in them. I mean, it's not entirely fabricated, but they covered it in such a biased way in order to influence, public opinion against certain political parties, and the left, center-left political parties, chiefly the Workers' Party.
That certain political party he's talking about is the PT, or Workers' Party, that Lula and the current runner-up in the polls, Fernando Haddad, belong to. What was the result of the media's relentless onslaught against corruption in Brazil?
It spilled over to the whole political system. So the political system is so discredited that now this far-right, outsider, self-fashioned guy, anti-gay, anti-abortion, anti-minorities, everything that you could, have in an extreme right-wing candidate is leading the polls.
Does it scare you that the far right is gaining such traction and is leading the polls?
I think it scares me and scares everybody who's concerned with democracy in Brazil, as a matter of fact.
Elections are about numbers, and sometimes those numbers tell society more about itself than it cares to admit. It would appear that this election is lining up with the ideological center-left squaring up against the far right. Michael Appel in Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil. Professor Ferres says the media must bear some responsibility for using the litany of corruption scandals in Brazil to demonize not only one political party but an entire political system itself. That's perhaps why loud, populist, controversial statements are finding traction with a fed-up electorate who want anything but the status quo, even if the alternative has no real substance.